This is section 1.3 and the first video in that section, and today we're really focusing on finding the difference quotient, and notice this is target 1.4 for our class. The first thing we need to know is what is the difference quotient. Now, in class we will talk a little bit more about what all these things mean, but just for a general idea, the difference quotient really just means we're finding the rate of change on a graph. So we're going to practice today just the notation and how to find it, and then we can see some more later as to how it's used. There's three pieces to this quotient, as you can tell. The first piece is f of x plus h, and we really focused on finding f of x plus h in our video on evaluating functions. That's going to be the first thing we find when we do this, is f of x plus h. Once we have that, the next step would be to subtract whatever f of x is, so whatever your function is. And then the very final thing we would do after all of that would be to divide by h and simplify. And so that's going to be our third step, is dividing by that h. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll do a couple examples and really see how this works. Remember, the first thing we're going to do is find f of x plus h. So taking a look at my function 2x plus 1, I need to find f of x plus h. That means I'm going to take, I'm going to just on the side of my paper here find f of x plus h. So I'm going to take x plus h and plug it in for x and do a little simplifying, and I get 2x plus 2h plus 1. So there's my f of x plus h. Now remember, the second step we said is that we're next going to subtract f of x. So that's what we're going to subtract from there. So let's go ahead and rewrite what we have. We had 2x plus 2h plus 1. And now from that, we're going to subtract f of x, and our f of x is 2x plus 1. I'm going to make sure I put it in parentheses because I'm going to need to distribute in the end. Just to finish off our difference quotient before we simplify, remember the final piece here is going to be to divide all of that by h. So here's our difference quotient now. We'll just put 2x, f of x plus h on the side there. Here's what we're working with, and let's continue. The next step would be to distribute our negative sign. So when I do that, we have 2x plus 2h plus 1 minus 2x and minus 1 when I distribute the negative, and then that whole thing will end up being divided by an h. If I try to do some simplifying on the top, I can see that my 2x's cancel out and so do my 1's. So it looks like the only thing on top we're left with is 2h divided by h. Using our basic rules of algebra, we can see here that those h's cancel out. So our final answer to the difference quotient here is 2. Just to review a little bit what we just did, notice that the very first thing we did is started with that x plus h. So we found f of x plus h. After that, we subtracted the original function f of x, and then we did some simplifying here on the top, and finally we divided by h to get our solution. Those are kind of the three steps you're going to want to go through each time you do these. Let's take a look at another example. Our original function is a little bit more going on. We have x squared minus 2x plus 1. So as always, I recommend starting on the side of your paper by finding f of x plus h. This is usually the hardest part in these difference quotients. Now in this case, it's a little bit more complicated because we're squaring x plus h, we're minusing 2 times x plus h, and then we're adding 1. Now to do my simplifying, I'm going to use my shortcut here for squaring x plus h and square the x, multiply x and h together with a 2, and then square the h. We need to distribute that 2, and finally add 1. Now this here is going to be my f of x plus h, because it doesn't look like anything there is going to simplify. It's quite long. Rather than rewrite all that, we'll just remember that this here is f of x plus h. So continuing on from there, remember the next piece is to subtract that f of x. So we're going to subtract x squared minus 2x plus 1. And then after we do all that simplifying, the last step will be to divide by h. To make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to distribute that negative sign, and I'm not going to rewrite all this. I'm just going to know that my x squared is going to become negative, my 2x is going to be positive, and my 1 is going to turn negative. So now let's look for things that can cancel. It looks to me like my x squareds are positive and negative. Those are going to cancel out. My 2x's are going to cancel out. My positive 1's are going to cancel out. So if I look at what's left on the top, going across the top, I have an h squared. I like to write my squared terms first. 2xh's and a minus 2h all over h. Now, I'm trying to divide by h, but there's nothing right now I can cancel because on the top we're adding and subtracting all the pieces on the top, so I can't do any canceling yet. If there was a multiplication problem on that top, then I could. So what I'm going to notice is that each of those terms has a common factor of h. So I'm going to take that h and pull it in front. When I do that, what I'm left with is an h, a 2x, and a 2. Notice that all I did is I took an h out of each of those terms, a common factor of h. That whole thing will be being divided by h. And now because the top is a multiplication problem, my h's can cancel out, and I can get my final answer here of h plus 2x minus 2. So there's my final difference quotient answer. Let's go ahead and take a look at one more together. So now we are finding the difference quotient again for another one. So just as last time, we start with that f of x plus h. So let's go ahead and find f of x plus h. That means we're going to take 2, and then we're going to be multiplying it by x plus h squared minus x plus h, and don't forget to put it in parentheses, plus 3. And again, this is my f of x plus h piece. So when I simplify this, we get x squared, 2xh, and h squared, minus x minus h plus 3. And the last piece would be to distribute that too. So we end up with 2x squared, 4xh's, 2h squared. Now, there's my x plus h. The next step there is to subtract that f of x piece, so minus your original function, and I'm going to put it in parentheses. And then lastly, we're going to divide all that by h. Just to save on paper here, I'm going to distribute my negative signs, so the 2x squared is going to be negative, the negative x is going to be positive, and the 3 will be negative. And now we can look for some canceling that will happen. Looks like those 2x squareds cancel out, so do the x's, and so do the 3's. So what do we have left? We're left with 2h squared, a 4xh, and a minus h, and all that will be divided by h. Once again, I see this common factor of h in all my pieces, so we'll go ahead and factor that out. When I do that, I'm left with a 2h, a 4x, and when I factor out of minus h, we're left with minus 1. I can't forget that 1 back there, because if I distributed the h back in, I want to make sure that I get what I started with. So canceling out those h's, we get our final answer here. And there's our difference quotient for that first function. I'm now going to give you 2 to try. So here's your multiple choice question. I want you to find the difference quotient for 3x squared. And when you're finished, you can go ahead to the free response, which is the same thing for 9x minus 5. Make sure you put those answers into your Google form.